The whispers followed Yuna everywhere she walked on Station Aurelia. She could hear them now, floating through the crowded diplomatic hall like smoke. Two Valorian officials stood near the water fountain, their silver-blue skin catching the light as they leaned close to each other. They thought she could not hear them. They were wrong. "There she goes again," one of them said. "The great diplomat with her human pet walking behind her. I heard she actually married the creature." Can you imagine? A Valorian of her status, bound to something so primitive. Yuna kept walking. Her back stayed straight. Her luminescent eyes stayed fixed ahead. She had learned long ago that reacting to such words only made them louder. 3 steps behind her, as always, walked Dowan. He was not tall by human standards, but he moved with a strange stillness that made others notice him. His dark hair was cut short. His eyes were brown and calm like deep water. He wore simple clothes, dark and practical, and at his hip hung an old sword in a worn leather case. He never spoke unless spoken to. He rarely spoke even then. The other aliens on the station called him many things: Pet, Shadow, the Silent One. Some laughed at him openly. Others simply pretended he did not exist. Dowan never seemed to care. Yuna reached the end of the hall and stepped into a waiting transport pod. Dowan followed and stood beside her as the doors closed. Through the transparent walls, they watched the station spin slowly around them. Thousands of ships docked at its ports. Millions of beings from dozens of species lived and worked within its metal walls. Station Aurelia was the heart of galactic trade, and Yuna had spent 15 years climbing to its highest levels of power. And then she had married a human. "The council meeting is in 1 hour," she said, not looking at him. "The Keth Dominion arrives today." Dowan nodded once. "They will try to intimidate us. Their warlord, Gon, is known for his cruelty. He has conquered 12 systems in the past decade alone." Another nod. Yuna finally turned to look at him. Even after 3 years of marriage, she sometimes found herself studying his face, searching for something she could not name. "You do not have to attend. The Keth despise humans. They will insult you." "I know," Dowan said. "Neither warm nor cold. And you will come anyway." Yes, she wanted to ask why. She always wanted to ask why. Why did he stay silent when others mocked him? Why did he carry that old sword when plasma weapons could cut through starship hulls? Why did he watch everything with those calm, patient eyes as if he was waiting for something that never came? But she had learned not to ask. Dowan answered questions with more silence, and the silence only created more questions. Instead, she turned back to the window and remembered the day she found him. It had been 3 years ago, near the Frontier Nebula. Her ship had detected a small escape pod drifting in the void, its power nearly dead. When they brought it aboard, they found a human man inside, barely alive. He had no identification, no record of his ship or his mission. The only things he carried were the clothes on his body and the sword at his hip. He said his name was Dowan. He said he did not remember anything else. The doctors could find nothing wrong with his memory. There was no injury, no disease, no explanation. It was as if someone had simply erased parts of his mind and left the rest intact. Yuna should have left him at the nearest human settlement. That would have been the sensible thing to do. But something about him had caught her attention. The way he moved, the way he watched, the way he seemed to see everything while saying nothing. She kept him as a guard at first, then a companion. Then, to the shock of everyone who knew her, she married him. Her colleagues thought she had gone mad. Humans were considered one of the weakest species in the galaxy. They lived short lives. They had no natural weapons, no special abilities, no great technology. They were tolerated in galactic society the way one might tolerate a harmless pet. But Yuna had seen something in Dowan that others missed. In a world full of noise and politics and endless talking, he was solid, steady, real. When everyone around her spoke with hidden meanings and secret plans, Dowan said nothing at all. And somehow that was more honest than anything she had heard in years. She had grown to love him. She did not fully understand him, but she loved him. The transport pod arrived at the council level. Yuna stepped out first, and Dowan followed 3 steps behind. Other diplomats filled the wide corridor, moving toward the main chamber. She saw Hyarim standing near the entrance, tall and elegant in her formal robes. Hyarim was everything Yuna was supposed to be. Pure Valorian blood, traditional marriage to a highborn male of their species, perfect reputation. She smiled as Yuna approached, but her eyes were cold. "Yuna," Hyarim said, "I see you brought your shadow. I see you brought your opinions," Yuna replied. "Try not to share too many of them during the meeting." Hyarim's smile did not change. "The Keth will eat you alive today, perhaps literally. I hear Warlord Gon enjoys making examples of those he considers weak." Her eyes moved to Dowan. "Speaking of weak." Dowan looked at her. Just looked. His face showed nothing. Hyarim's smile flickered for just a moment. Something about those calm eyes seemed to disturb her. Then she recovered and walked away, her robes flowing behind her. "She fears you," Yuna said quietly. "She should not," Dowan replied. "I am just a human." Before Yuna could respond, a deep horn sounded through the station. The lights in the corridor dimmed and then brightened again. All around them, diplomats stopped talking and turned toward the main viewport. A massive ship was emerging from faster-than-light travel, its dark hull covered in sharp angles and weapon ports. Behind it came a dozen more ships. Then 100. Then too many to count. The Keth fleet had arrived, and it was larger than anyone had expected. Yuna felt her heart beat faster. This was not a diplomatic visit. This was a show of force. "Well," she said softly. "It begins." She walked toward the council chamber. Dowan followed in silence, his hand resting lightly on the hilt of his ancient sword. Neither of them knew that everything was about to change. The council chamber fell silent when Warlord Gon entered. He was enormous. Even among the Keth, who were known for their size, Gon stood apart. He was nearly 8 feet tall, his body covered in thick scales, the color of dried blood. Scars crossed his face and arms like a map of every battle he had ever won. His eyes were yellow and burned with a hunger that made even the bravest diplomats look away. Behind him walked 20 Keth warriors, each one armed with plasma weapons and vibroblades. They spread out around the chamber like predators surrounding prey. Yuna stood with the other Valorian diplomats at the far end of the room. She kept her face calm, but inside she felt cold. The Keth fleet outside was 5 times larger than intelligence reports had predicted. This was not a negotiation. This was a threat wrapped in the thin clothing of diplomacy. Gon stopped in the center of the chamber. His yellow eyes moved slowly across the gathered diplomats, measuring each one. When his gaze reached Yuna, it paused. Then it moved to Dowan, standing silently behind her. A low rumble came from Gon's throat. It might have been a laugh. "What is this?" he asked. His voice was deep and rough like stones grinding together. "The Valorians bring pets to council meetings now?" Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Yuna felt heat rise to her face, but she controlled it. "This is my husband," she said clearly. "He serves as my personal guard." Gon's laugh grew louder. "Husband? Guard?" He turned to his warriors, who joined in his laughter. "The Valorians have fallen far indeed. They marry their pets and call them protectors." He stepped closer to Yuna, close enough that she could smell the blood on his breath. "Tell me, little diplomat, what protection can this creature offer? Humans are the weakest species in the galaxy. They have no claws, no scales, no venom. They live such short lives that they barely have time to learn anything useful before they die." Yuna opened her mouth to respond, but Gon was not finished. "On my home world, we keep humans as servants, sometimes as food." He smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. "Your husband would make a fine meal, small but tender." The chamber was completely silent now. Every diplomat watched to see what Yuna would do. She could feel Hyarim's eyes on her, eager to see her fail. Yuna forced herself to smile. The Keth are known for many things, Warlord. Diplomacy is not one of them. Perhaps we should discuss why you are truly here, rather than comparing the qualities of our spouses. Gon's smile faded. He stared at her for a long moment, and she saw death in his eyes. Then he turned away and walked to the negotiation table. Very well, he said. Let us discuss. The negotiation lasted for hours. Gon demanded territorial concessions from the Valorian Council. He wanted 3 star systems along the border, systems rich with minerals and strategic value. He presented it as a fair exchange for continued peace. Everyone in the room knew what he really meant. Give us what we want, or we will take it by force. The Valorian Council members argued among themselves. Some wanted to resist. Others, including Hiram, spoke of compromise. Throughout it all, Gon sat back in his chair and watched with the patience of a predator who knew his prey had nowhere to run. Yuna tried to find middle ground. She proposed trade agreements, shared mining rights, diplomatic partnerships. Gon rejected everything. He wanted the systems. He would accept nothing less. As the hours passed, Yuna noticed something strange. Throughout all the arguments and threats, Gon kept looking at Dowan. Her husband had not moved from his position behind her chair. He had not spoken a single word. He simply stood there, watching everything with those calm brown eyes. And it seemed to bother Gon. The warlord who had conquered 12 systems, who had killed thousands with his own hands, kept glancing at a silent human, as if something about him was wrong. Finally, Gon interrupted a council member mid-sentence. Your pet, he said, pointing at Dowan. Why does he carry that primitive weapon? The chamber went quiet again. Yuna turned slightly. My husband carries a family blade. It is a human tradition. A blade made of simple metal, Gon said. No energy, no plasma, no technology. Just dead steel. He stood up from his chair. On my world, warriors earn their weapons through combat. What has your pet done to earn his? Dowan did not answer. He did not even blink. Gon walked around the table, moving closer. His warriors shifted, hands moving to their weapons. I asked you a question, human. Are you deaf as well as mute? Silence. Perhaps he is simply broken, Hiram said from across the room. Yuna found him drifting in space with no memory. He might not have the mind to answer. Gon laughed. A broken pet for a broken diplomat. How fitting. He reached out and grabbed the hilt of Dowan's sword, trying to pull it from its case. It did not move. Gon's smile disappeared. He pulled harder. The sword stayed exactly where it was, held in place by Dowan's hand on the hilt. The human had not seemed to move at all. But his grip was like iron. For a long moment, the warlord and the human looked at each other. Something passed between them. Something that made Gon's yellow eyes narrow with suspicion. Then Dowan let go, and the sword slid free. Gon examined the blade. It was old. Very old. Made of dark steel that did not reflect the light. There were no decorations on it. No markings, nothing to show where it came from, or who had made it. This is nothing, Gon said, tossing the sword back. Dowan caught it without looking, and returned it to its case in one smooth motion. Just dead metal carried by a dead species. The negotiation ended soon after that. Nothing was resolved. Gon made it clear that the Valorians had 3 days to accept his demands, or the Keth fleet would provide a different kind of answer. That night, Yuna sat in her quarters and stared at the stars. The Keith ships hung in space like dark clouds, blocking out the light of distant suns. Dowan stood by the window, silent as always. You could have said something, Yuna said. You could have defended yourself. Why? Because they mock you. They call you weak. They call you a pet. Her voice broke slightly. They think I am a fool for marrying you. Dowan turned to look at her. Does their opinion matter to you? No. Yes. I don't know. She stood up and walked to him. I need to understand, Dowan. I have loved you for 3 years, but I feel like I do not know you at all. Who were you before I found you? What happened to your memories? For a long moment, he did not answer. Then he spoke, more words than he had said in months. I was someone who made sure conversations like today's never happened twice. Yuna felt a chill run down her spine. What does that mean? Before Do-won could answer, alarms began to scream throughout the station. Red lights flashed. The floor trembled beneath their feet. Warning, the station computer announced. Security breach detected. Multiple hostile forces in Sector 7. All personnel seek shelter immediately. Yuna's blood went cold. Sector 7 was the diplomatic housing area. Someone was attacking the diplomats. Do-won's hand moved to his sword. His calm eyes changed, becoming sharp and focused like a blade being drawn from its case. Stay close to me, he said quietly. It was not a request. The corridor was dark when they stepped outside. Emergency lights flickered red against the walls. Smoke drifted through the air, carrying the smell of burning metal and something worse. Somewhere in the distance, Yuna heard screaming. The main security station is 4 levels up, she said, trying to keep her voice steady. If we can reach it? No. Do-won's hand closed around her wrist. They will expect diplomats to go there. That is where they will be waiting. Then where do we go? Service corridors, maintenance paths, places that are not on the official maps. He pulled her gently but firmly toward a side passage. Follow me. Do not stop. Do not speak unless I tell you. Yuna had never heard him talk like this. His voice was still quiet, but there was something underneath it now. Something hard and cold like the steel of his sword. She followed without argument. They moved through the station like shadows. Do-won seemed to know exactly where to go, turning down corridors she had never seen, opening doors that should have been locked. He moved differently too. His steps made no sound. His body stayed low and balanced. Every few seconds, his eyes would scan the darkness ahead, checking, measuring, planning. This was not the quiet husband she knew. This was someone else entirely. They were passing through a storage area when Do-won suddenly stopped. His hand went up, signaling her to freeze. Yuna held her breath. Footsteps echoed from somewhere ahead, heavy footsteps, moving with purpose. Then she heard voices speaking in the rough language of the Keth. The Valorian diplomat lives in this sector. Find her. The warlord wants her alive if possible. Dead, if necessary. Yuna's heart pounded so hard she thought it might burst from her chest. This was not a random attack. This was an assassination attempt. And she was the target. Do-won pulled her behind a stack of cargo containers. Through the gaps, she could see 3 Keth warriors entering the storage area. They were armed with plasma rifles and wore light combat armor. Their yellow eyes glowed in the dim light as they searched. There is no way out, Yuna whispered. We are trapped. Do-won looked at her. In the red emergency light, his eyes seemed darker than she had ever seen them. Stay here. Do not move until I call for you. What are you going to do? He did not answer. Instead, he drew his sword. The blade made no sound as it left its case. It was dark metal, old and worn, completely ordinary in every way. Against Keth, warriors with plasma weapons and armor, it should have been useless. But as Yuna watched Do-won step out from behind the containers, she felt something change in the air. It was like watching a storm form on the horizon. Quiet at first, then building, then unstoppable. The first Keth warrior saw him and raised his rifle. Human, stop where you are or... Do-won moved. Yuna's eyes could not follow what happened next. One moment, Do-won was standing 5 meters away from the warrior. The next moment, he was behind him, and the warrior was falling with a red line across his throat. The second Keth fired his plasma rifle. The shot lit up the storage area like lightning. But Do-won was not there anymore. He was to the side, then forward, then his blade was cutting through the gap in the warrior's armor where the neck met the shoulder. The third Keth was faster. He dropped his rifle and pulled a vibroblade, a weapon that could cut through starship hulls. He swung at Do-won with all his strength. Do-won did not block. He simply was not in the path of the blade anymore. His body flowed around the attack like water around a stone. Then his sword moved once, twice, and the third warrior collapsed. 7 seconds. 3 Keth warriors dead. And Dowan was not even breathing hard. He cleaned his blade on the armor of the fallen warrior and looked back at Yuna. "We should keep moving," he said quietly. Yuna stepped out from behind the containers on shaking legs. She stared at her husband, at this man she had shared a bed with for 3 years, and realized she had never known him at all. "How?" Her voice came out as a whisper. "How did you do that?" "We do not have time for questions now. Dowan, you just killed 3 Keth warriors with a metal sword. They had plasma weapons. They had armor. How is that possible?" He looked at her with those calm brown eyes. "Humans are not as weak as the galaxy believes. We simply choose not to show our strength." He held out his hand. After a moment, she took it. They continued through the service corridors. Twice more they encountered Keth warriors. And twice more, Yuna watched her husband become something else. Something fast, and silent, and absolutely deadly. He did not fight the way aliens fought, with technology and brute force. He fought with something older. Every movement had purpose. Every cut was precise. He used the enemy's strength against them, let them commit to attacks that left them open, found the weak points in their armor that no scanner should have been able to see. When they finally reached a secure area controlled by station security, they found a group of other diplomats hiding there. Hiram was among them, her perfect robes torn and dirty. Her eyes went wide when she saw Yuna. "You survived? But the Keth were hunting specifically for you. How did you—" Her voice trailed off as she noticed the blood on Dowan's sword. "What happened?" "One. On the round again, Herman. Sama. What happened?" "My husband happened," Yuna said. Word spread quickly through the station. By the time the attack was contained, everyone had heard the story. The silent human who walked 3 steps behind his wife had killed 9 Keth warriors with nothing but an ancient blade. 9 of the fiercest warriors in the galaxy, armed with the best weapons technology could create, cut down by a man carrying dead metal. The survivors who witnessed Dowan's skill could not explain what they had seen. The security footage showed a blur of movement, too fast for the cameras to track clearly. Analysis of the Keth bodies showed wounds that were surgically precise, placed exactly where the armor was weakest. In the medical bay where the wounded were being treated, Yuna sat beside Dowan. He had a small cut on his arm, the only injury he had received. A doctor was bandaging it while looking at him with barely hidden fear. "You could have told me," Yuna said quietly, so only he could hear. "Would you have believed me? I don't know. Maybe not." She watched his face. "The man I married was quiet and gentle. The man I saw tonight was a killer," Dowan finished for her. "I know. I was going to say a warrior. But yes, also a killer." She took his hand carefully. "Who were you, Dowan? Before I found you in that escape pod? What did they take from your memory?" He was silent for a long time. The medical bay hummed with activity around them. Wounded diplomats groaned in pain. Security officers rushed back and forth with reports. Finally, Dowan spoke. "There are things about humanity that the galaxy does not know. Things we have hidden for centuries. We let other species think we are weak because it is useful. Because no one fears a weak species. No one watches them closely. No one prepares for them. And you?" "I was part of the hiding. Part of the reason other species feel safe looking down on us." His voice dropped even lower. "I was very good at my job, Yuna. Too good. Eventually, I became a problem, so they erased me, took my memories, put me in a pod, and sent me drifting into the void. Who did this to you? I don't know. I remember fragments. Missions. Targets. Training that lasted for years. But the rest is gone." He looked at her with something like pain in his eyes. "I stopped talking because I was afraid. Afraid that if I opened my mouth, the old me would come out. The killer. The weapon. I did not want you to see that." Yuna felt tears forming in her eyes. "I see it now. I know. I'm sorry. Don't be." She squeezed his hand. "You saved my life. You saved all of us." Before he could respond, a security officer approached them. "Ambassador Yuna? Warlord Gon is demanding to speak with you. He claims the attack was carried out by rogue elements without his approval." Yuna laughed bitterly. "Of course he does. There's more. He is demanding satisfaction for the death of his warriors. He wants to challenge your husband to formal combat." The medical bay went quiet. Everyone had heard. Yuna looked at Dowan. His face was calm again, the storm hidden behind still water. "Tell the warlord," Dowan said quietly, "that I accept." The news of the duel spread across the station like fire through dry grass. By morning, everyone on Station Aurelia knew what had happened. They knew about the assassination attempt. They knew about the silent human who had killed 9 Keth warriors with an ancient sword. And they knew that Warlord Gon, conqueror of 12 star systems, had challenged this human to formal combat. The betting markets went wild. Thousands of aliens placed wagers on the outcome. Almost all of them bet on Gon. The warlord had never lost a duel in his life. He had killed opponents from a dozen different species, warriors trained in combat since birth. What chance did a human have against him? But there were whispers too. Quiet conversations in dark corners about what the security footage had shown. About how fast the human had moved. About how precise his blade had been. Something was not right. Something about humanity did not match what the galaxy believed. Yuna spent the day in meetings, trying to manage the political storm that had followed the attack. Gon continued to claim that the assassins were rogues acting without his orders. No one believed him. But no one could prove otherwise. The diplomatic situation grew more complicated by the hour. She returned to her quarters in the evening, exhausted and afraid. Dowan sat by the window, cleaning his sword with a cloth. The blade gleamed dark in the starlight. "You don't have to do this," she said. "Under galactic law, you can refuse the duel. Gon would lose honor. And you would lose your position." Dowan did not look up from his work. "Hiram is already telling the council that your judgment is compromised. If I refuse to fight, they will say I am a coward. They will say you married a coward. Your career will be finished. I don't care about my career. You should. You worked 15 years to build it." He finally looked at her. "And I will not let them take it from you because of me." Yuna sat down across from him. "Tell me honestly. Can you win?" "Yes." "You sound certain." "I am." She studied his face. "When you fought those warriors, you moved like nothing I have ever seen. How is that possible? Humans are supposed to be slow, weak." "That is what everyone says." Dowan set down his sword. "What do you know about human history?" Dowan: "Not much. Your species has only been part of galactic civilization for 200 years. Before that, you were isolated on your home planet. For thousands of years," Dowan said. "We were alone on Earth with no one to fight but each other. And we fought constantly. Wars that lasted generations. Weapons that could destroy entire cities. We developed killing into an art form, Yuna. We studied it, refined it, passed it down through bloodlines. But other species have been fighting longer. The Keth have conquered. The Keth fight with their bodies, with their strength, and their claws and their teeth. They rely on what nature gave them." Dowan picked up his sword again. "Humans had nothing. No claws, no armor, no natural weapons. So we made our own. We trained our bodies until they could do things that seemed impossible. We learned to use tools as extensions of ourselves. We discovered that precision beats power, that speed beats strength, that the mind is the deadliest weapon of all. And you? What did you do with all that knowledge?" "I became what humanity needed me to become." His voice was soft, almost sad. "When we joined galactic civilization, we saw how other species looked at us. Weak, primitive, harmless, and our leaders decided to let them believe it. It was safer that way. No one prepares for a threat they do not see coming, but you remember now. Your memories are coming back, slowly." In fragments. He closed his eyes. I remember training in darkness until I could fight without seeing. I remember learning to read opponents by the way they breathed. I remember missions that I was never supposed to talk about, against enemies that were never supposed to exist. A knock at the door interrupted them. Yuna opened it to find a human man standing in the corridor. He wore a military uniform with no markings or rank insignia. His face was lined with age, but his eyes were sharp. Ambassador Yuna, he said. My name is Taeyong. I am a military attaché assigned to the human delegation here. May I speak with your husband? Yuna looked at Do-won. He nodded slowly, as if he had been expecting this. Taeyong entered the room and stood facing Do-won. For a long moment, neither man spoke. They simply looked at each other. And Yuna felt something pass between them that she did not understand. I thought you were dead, Taeyong finally said. Everyone thought you were dead. Perhaps I am. Do-won did not stand up. Who sent you? No one sent me. I came because I saw the security footage from the attack. I recognized your style. Taeyong's voice dropped. You were Silence Corps. You. The words meant nothing to Yuna, but she saw Do-won's jaw tighten slightly. That name does not exist, Do-won said. Neither did you, according to official records. Taeyong sat down uninvited. The Silence Corps was disbanded 30 years ago. Erased from all databases. Every member either retired to deep cover or was removed. The galaxy was supposed to forget that human soldiers could do what you did. Why are you telling me this? Because Warlord Gon is not just a military leader. He is one of the greatest warriors the Keth have ever produced. He has killed 200 opponents in personal combat. He fights with a plasma-edged axe that can cut through starship armor. Taeyong leaned forward. If you face him tomorrow, you need to be more than what you have been for the past 3 years. You need to be what you were before. Do-won was silent for a long time. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. That man killed without hesitation, without mercy. He completed missions that would give normal people nightmares for the rest of their lives. He looked at Yuna. I do not want to be him again. You may not have a choice. Taeyong stood up. The duel is being broadcast across the galaxy. Billions of beings will watch. They will see either a human slaughtered by a Keth warlord, confirming everything the galaxy believes about our weakness, or they will see something else entirely. He walked to the door. Think about what that means. Not just for you. For all of humanity. He left without another word. Yuna knelt beside her husband. She took his hands in hers. They were calloused and strong, hands that had held her gently for 3 years and had killed 9 warriors in seconds. Tell me what you are thinking, she said. I am thinking about what I gave up when I lost my memories. His voice was rough. I thought it was a curse. Waking up in that escape pod with nothing but my name and my sword. But maybe it was a gift, a chance to be someone different, someone quiet and peaceful, someone who could love and be loved. You can still be that person, can I? He looked at her. If I fight Gon tomorrow, I will have to become the other one, the weapon, the killer. And I do not know if I can come back from that. Yuna felt tears on her cheeks. Then come back to me. Whatever you have to become in that arena, come back to me when it is over. I will be waiting. Do-won pulled her close. He held her tight, and she felt him trembling slightly. The silent man who never showed emotion was afraid. Not of the duel, not of Gon, but of losing himself forever. I will try. He whispered into her hair. I will try. Outside the window, the Keth fleet hung in space like 1,000 dark moons. Tomorrow, the galaxy would learn the truth about humanity. Tomorrow, the silence would end. The arena was ancient. It had been built into Station Aurelia 2 centuries ago, when the first galactic treaties were signed. Formal combat was a recognized way to settle disputes between species. Blood had been spilled on its sand thousands of times. Today, the arena was full. Diplomats and traders, soldiers and servants, beings from every corner of the galaxy had come to watch. The stands rose high above the circular fighting ground, packed with bodies. Screens floated throughout the station, broadcasting the event to those who could not be there in person. Across 1,000 worlds, billions of eyes watched and waited. Yuna sat in the diplomatic section, her hands gripping the arms of her chair. Hiram was beside her, along with the rest of the Valorian delegation. None of them spoke. The first door opened, and Warlord Gon entered the arena. The crowd roared. Keth warriors pounded their fists against their chests in salute. Gon raised his arms to accept their praise. He wore full battle armor, black and red, decorated with the symbols of every system he had conquered. In his hands, he carried his famous weapon, a great axe with a blade that glowed with plasma energy. The weapon had killed hundreds. It would kill again today. Gon walked to the center of the arena and stood there, waiting. His yellow eyes found Yuna in the crowd, and he smiled. The second door opened. Dowan walked out alone. He wore no armor. Just simple black clothes, the same kind he wore every day. His sword hung at his hip in its worn leather case. He looked small against the vast arena, small against the towering figure of the Keth warlord. The crowd fell silent. They had heard the stories about the human who killed 9 warriors. But seeing him now, seeing how ordinary he looked, many began to doubt those stories. Surely this creature could not face Gon and survive. Dowan walked to the center of the arena and stopped 5 meters from his opponent. His face was calm. His breathing was steady. He looked at Gon the same way he looked at everything, with quiet patience. "I am going to enjoy this," Gon said, his voice carrying through the arena. "I have killed many warriors in this place, but I have never killed a human before. I wonder if your blood is as red as ours." Dowan did not answer. Gon's smile widened. "Nothing to say? No final words? No begging for mercy?" He laughed. "The silent human will die in silence." How fitting. The ceremonial horn sounded. The duel had begun. Gon attacked immediately. He charged forward with terrifying speed, his plasma axe cutting through the air in a wide arc. The crowd gasped. There was no way the human could avoid such a strike, but Dowan was not there. He had moved before Gon's weapon even reached him. A small step to the side, a slight turn of his body, and the axe passed through empty air. Gon stumbled past, carried by his own momentum. The warlord turned and attacked again, faster this time, more controlled. His axe moved in patterns designed to trap an opponent, to leave no room for escape. Dowan flowed through the attacks like water through rocks. He never blocked, never clashed his blade against the plasma edge. He simply was not where the weapon expected him to be. Every strike missed by inches, every killing blow found only air. The crowd watched in stunned silence. This was not combat. This was something else. The human was not fighting. He was dancing. Gon grew angry. His attacks became faster, more furious. Sweat ran down his scaled face. His breath came in heavy bursts. He was using energy, burning through his strength, while the human had not even drawn his sword. "Stand still," Gon roared. "Face me like a warrior." Dowan stopped moving. He stood perfectly still in the center of the arena, his hand resting on the hilt of his sword. "As you wish," he said quietly. His blade left its case so fast that no one saw it happen. One moment it was sheathed. The next moment it was cutting toward Gon's throat. The warlord barely blocked in time. The old steel met the plasma edge and did not break. Sparks flew into the air. For the first time, Gon looked surprised. They exchanged blows. It was different now. Dowan was attacking, and each attack was precise, measured, aimed at the weak points in Gon's armor. The warlord blocked desperately, his great axe suddenly too slow, too heavy. He was being pushed backward, step by step. The crowd erupted. This was impossible. A human was driving back, a Keth warlord. A simple steel blade was matching plasma technology. Everything they believed about humanity was crumbling before their eyes. Gon tried to create distance, tried to reset, but Dowan followed him like a shadow, giving him no rest. The human's sword moved in patterns that seemed impossible, striking from angles that did not exist, finding gaps in armor that should not have been there. Blood appeared on Gon's arm. Then his leg. Then his face. Small cuts. Precise cuts. Nothing fatal. But they kept coming. The warlord, who had never lost, was being taken apart, piece by piece. "What are you?" Gon demanded. His voice was no longer confident. There was fear in it now. Do-Wan did not answer. He simply kept attacking. His face calm. His breathing still steady. The storm had fully arrived. And it was merciless. The end came quickly. A strike to Gon's wrist made him drop his axe. A kick to his knee brought him down. And then the old steel blade was at his throat, pressing just hard enough to draw a single drop of blood. The arena was completely silent. No one moved. No one breathed. Do-Wan stood over the fallen warlord. For a long moment, he was still. Then he spoke, and his voice carried to every corner of the arena, to every screen across the galaxy. Humans learned long ago that the loudest voice in the room is rarely the most dangerous. We built our reputation on being underestimated. We prefer it that way. He lowered his sword and stepped back. Gon lay in the sand, alive but defeated. The greatest warrior of the Keth Dominion had been beaten by a human carrying dead metal. Do-Wan turned and walked toward the exit. Halfway there, he stopped and looked up at where Yuna sat. She was crying, not from fear or sadness, but from something else. Pride, perhaps, or relief, or love for this man who had kept so much hidden for so long. Do-Wan bowed his head slightly. Then he continued walking and disappeared through the door. The political changes came quickly after that. The Keth withdrew their demands and retreated from the system. Other species began quietly reassessing their assumptions about humanity. Trade negotiations that had been stuck for years suddenly moved forward. Doors that had been closed to human diplomats suddenly opened. No one said it directly. No one admitted what had changed their minds. But everyone knew. They had seen what a single human could do with an old sword and centuries of hidden knowledge. They wondered how many others like him were out there, watching, waiting, staying silent. 3 days later, Yuna stood with Do-Wan at the observation deck. The Keth fleet was gone. The stars were bright again. "Will you keep being silent?" she asked. Do-Wan considered the question. The storm was gone now. The killer had returned to wherever he stayed when he was not needed. Her husband was back. Quiet, and calm, and present. "Only when I need to be," he said. Yuna smiled. "And your memories? Are they still coming back?" "Some of them, not all." He looked at her. "I remember enough to know that I want to stay with you. Whatever I was before, whatever I might become, I want to be here, if you will have me. I married you when I thought you were just a man I found drifting in space. I think I can manage being married to a legendary warrior." For the first time in years, Do-Wan smiled. It was a small smile, quiet like everything else about him. But it was real. He took her hand, and they stood together watching the stars. Behind them, the galaxy continued to turn, full of species and empires and ancient rivalries. Ahead of them lay an uncertain future, full of questions and challenges and dangers, but they would face it together. The diplomat and her husband, the voice and the silence, the two halves of something whole. And somewhere in the depths of human space, others who had been silent for too long began to wake up. The galaxy had seen what one human could do. Perhaps it was time for them to see more. The universe had changed. And it had started with a sword.